give up. That's Winston Churchill, who in my mind is the greatest man of the 20th century, single-handedly kept Britain from being annihilated by the Germans. And remember, he said if necessary alone, they were in that alone. Battle of Britain, Winston Churchill and the Brits, they were in that puppy alone. We were not their allies yet. We had not come to their aid. We had not entered the war effort. We didn't do it until Pearl Harbor. And then we came alongside Great Britain and we became fast allies and we defeated the Nazi menace. But at that point in England's history, Winston Churchill and Great Britain standing alone against the might of the Nazi war machine. And Churchill, those speeches still cause a hair to stand up on the back of my neck. The power, 1940, what is that, 72 years ago, and still those words, as simple and direct as they were, have the power to move and sort of send a Chris Matthews tingle right up your leg. So Winston Churchill, greatest man of the 20th century, said, look, we're never going to give in. We're going to defend our islands even if we have to do it alone. Now, Skillet, not in the same tier as Winston Churchill, but saying the same thing. Never surrender. We are not going to give up. And I think that is our lesson for today. I want to spend a little bit of time in this segment talking about what our response is as people of faith, as people of values to what happened yesterday. Yesterday was a debacle. I mean, let's just shoot straight here. I'm not going to try to sugarcoat that thing. I'm not going to try to put some kind of glaze on it. That was a disaster yesterday. It was an electoral disaster. It was a moral disaster. It was an economic disaster. It was a political disaster. It was a disaster for common sense and for sanity and for rationality. It was all of those things. And yet here it happened. And here we are this morning needing to deal with the debris that's been strewn all over the political landscape by this hurricane that swept across America yesterday, this political hurricane. Now, I've got several observations I want to make, and then I want to take your phone calls. I want to get your reaction, the postmortem. You know, we were doing postmortems last night in the last hour after the election results were in. It wasn't called till about 10:15 our time here. We were on between 10 and 11 for an additional hour of coverage because Ohio had not yet been called when we went off the air, when our basic coverage went off the air at 10 p.m. Central. So we stuck around for an extra hour. Tim Wildman, myself, and Buster Wilson, our general manager, we stuck around for an extra hour of sort of post-game analysis. And then it was in the first quarter hour of that segment of that last hour that the networks began calling this race for President Obama. So we began doing kind of the autopsy on this deal last night. And here we are this morning. We still got debris bobbing around in the surf. And we're doing the post-mortem on what happened yesterday and, more importantly, looking at what we do to move forward. And I want to suggest to you, and we'll take your calls here, number to call if you want to weigh in and add your comments to what happened yesterday, your reaction to it, where we go from here. Love to get your reaction. Got a lot of articles in here, just a lot of suggestions about what went wrong, and that's fine. We want to spend as much time as we need to kind of process what went wrong yesterday, what happened, how did this happen. You know, and I think, you know, part of the equation, I don't want to dwell on this, but part of the equation is we had another moderate candidate. In fact, it turns out, believe it or not, that turnout yesterday was smaller than it was in 2008. There were fewer voters for the Republican candidate in 2012 than there were for John McCain in 2008. So the turnout that we sort of anticipated coming from conservatives, from Republicans, just did not materialize. There's no enthusiasm out there. Why? Because the Republican Party simply did not give us a candidate for the second time in a row that generated any enthusiasm in the base. So one of the things I've suggested, I'll jump ahead here, but one of the things I've suggested we need to do as a conservative movement is we need to start now deciding who our best horse is for 2016. That's something we can do. We can start doing that today. Now, we got a stable full of strong horses. I believe that the American people want a governor. They want somebody with executive experience, someone that's got a proven track record, has had executive power, and used it. We've just seen what executive power is like in the hands of somebody who's never exercised it, never used it. It's a total, utter debacle under Barack Obama. So I think we see, look, you want to have somebody that's proven that they can take executive power and they can do something good and productive with it. So I think that's why we want to prefer a governor to run in 2016. Now, my personal favorite is Rick Perry. He kind of shot himself in the kneecap in this last primary, but he's still viable. He's he's still a guy that's got a lot on the ball. He's with us completely on the values issues. He's run the second largest state in the union now for a dozen years. He's one of us all the way through. And so I like Rick Perry, but you've got other governors that are also in the stable. You've got Bobby Jindal down in Louisiana. You have Scott Walker up in Wisconsin. You have Rick Scott down in Florida. You got Bob McDonnell up in Virginia. And new Indiana Governor Mike Pence. And I think Mike Pence might wind up being the dark horse here. I think Pence could wind up being our president in 2016. He's entirely with us on the values issues. Strong believer, strong in his faith. He will have had almost 4 years of executive experience under his belt by the time we get to 2016. So what I'm saying is the conservative movement needs to be talking about this right now. You know, part of what happened is we waited till we get in the primary season. All of a sudden, we had nobody with executive experience except for Rick Perry and Mitt Romney. They were the only two candidates in the race that had some kind of executive experience on their resume. Rick Perry kind of imploded, self-inflicted wound. And that virtually left us with Mitt Romney. I think part of the reason that there was little enthusiasm or not enough enthusiasm to carry a Rick Santorum across the finish line, to carry a Michelle Bachmann across the finish line, to carry a Herman Cain across the finish line. Part of that, and we'll have Herman Cain, by the way, on just about an hour from now, a little over an hour, to do sort of an evaluation of what happened yesterday with Herman Cain. But part of what I think held them back was their lack of executive experience. Now, so that's one thing we can do. I think there are three things that we can do. You know, the way I've got a piece at rightlyconcerned.com, and the way I've titled the piece is Yesterday Was Pearl Harbor. I mean, we got wreckage all over the place. We've got vessels that have been sunk or at the bottom of the sea. Yesterday was Pearl Harbor. Today, we start planning for Normandy. That's what we do. You have Pearl Harbor. You don't give up. You don't run up the white flag. You don't surrender to the Japanese. You start retooling, and you start planning your Normandy invasion. So that's what we're doing. We have suffered a catastrophic loss yesterday. No way to pretend otherwise. Pot got legalized in 3 states. Marriage was legalized in 4 states by the vote of the people. I mean, this was a disaster. Let's be honest about it. But you don't quit. You don't surrender. You start planning for Normandy, and that's what we're doing. And step one, I see it, is to start deciding who our candidate's going to be. Let's run Marco Rubio as a vice presidential candidate in 2016. He's a senator. He's a lawmaker. Therefore, I think we ought to go with the governor for the top slot. But Marco Rubio would make a very, very compelling running mate. So that's job one. Let's start recruiting a governor. Let's identify the horse we're going to ride and ride that guy all the way to the finish line in 2016. Now, here is step number 2, and that is to refuse to raise the debt ceiling. Don't do it. Now, Republicans retain control of the House of Representatives. This is huge. Do not minimize or underestimate what that means, because every appropriations bill has to go through the House. Now, the Constitution says no money shall be drawn from the Treasury but in consequence of appropriations made by law. It's not a law unless Congress passes it, and it's not a law unless the House passes it. It's got to pass the House and the Senate. That means President Obama cannot spend a single solitary dime implementing Obamacare, implementing all these EPA regulations, if he doesn't have any money in the Treasury to do it. And the House can stop him from getting his hands on that money because they control the purse strings. There's every tax revenue proposal, every tax increase proposal's got to start in the House. That's required by the Constitution. And the House can just say, no, we're not going to do it, and we're not going to raise the debt ceiling. The House can do it. They can say, no, we are not going to raise the debt ceiling. Realize now that the House is as responsible for Barack Obama for this $6 trillion in debt. Don't misunderstand this, or don't miss this. The Republicans want to blame all of this on Barack Obama. Ladies and gentlemen, Republicans in the House, they signed off on every single penny of borrowing. They signed off on this. They approved it. Remember, just a year ago, 15 months ago, they authorized an increase in the debt ceiling of $2.4 trillion. Who did that? That wasn't Barack Obama. That was the Republicans in the House of Representatives. They signed off on that. Their fingerprints are all over that puppy. So they raised the debt ceiling. They want to lay it off on Barack Obama. I'm not letting them do it anymore. I'm not letting them skate on this. Neither should you. The House Republicans got their fingerprints all over that puppy. Now, the bad news, see, if this is all Obama, there's nothing we can do. But if it's our own guys that are doing this to us, then there's something that we can do. We can call them to account. And so I think we need to begin sending the message to our representatives in the House of Representatives: do not raise the debt ceiling. You're the guy. You're the guys that are talking about balancing the budget. You're the guys that are talking about reining in out of control spending. You're the ones talking about getting a handle on the deficit, getting a handle on the growth of the federal government. You can do it. It's in your hands. Just refuse to raise the debt ceiling. Realize if the Republicans refuse to raise the debt ceiling, we have an instantaneous balanced budget. In other words, we're going to run up against the debt ceiling by the end of this calendar year. By the end of 2012, we are going to hit our debt ceiling limit. Now, the Treasury has some stuff they can do to monkey around and maybe stretch that out into January and February. I have no idea what that is. I don't even want to know, but they can do it. But you can't go much into February before you have got to raise the debt ceiling or stop spending money. And so our message to Republicans: stop spending money we don't have. Stop borrowing money. And you can do it. It is in your power to do it. Don't lay it off on Barack Obama. Don't lay it off on the Senate. It cannot happen. The debt ceiling cannot be raised without the participation, the collaboration, the complicity of the House of Representatives. Now, the third thing is this Republicans have enough senators. They didn't take control of the Senate, but they've still got 45 senators. That's enough to filibuster every Supreme Court nominee. President Obama may have an opportunity to nominate as many as 3 Supreme Court justices. The Republicans, ladies and gentlemen, in the Senate can block every single one of them. They got to be prepared to have the Supreme Court operate with 8 or 7 justices, but they can stop it if they choose. Focal Point AFR Talk.